Hi there, and welcome back to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Bird, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. Welcome in a very special guest this week, the creator of Decade Course Management, Scott Fawcett. And Scott, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Certainly one of our objectives with junior golfers, college golfers, all golfers, is to give them and constantly give them different ways to improve and get better. Obviously, it's all about growth and continuing to get better and work towards your goals. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Thanks for having me on. Honestly, first of all, just as you say, the creator of Decade Golf, just kind of I hate saying math-based strategy system just because it sounds a little intimidating. 7 minus 2 plus 1 is about as difficult as the math actually gets. But I did combine basically PGA Tour strokes gained statistics with basically the standard deviations of shot patterns from launch monitors. And I was really doing it just for my own game. And because of an injury back in 2014, I caddied for Zalatoris, who was just a junior golfer at my home course at the time that was, to be perfectly honest, struggling, and helped him win the Texas Amateur and caddied for him when he won the U.S. Junior. The SMU coach, who's a buddy of mine from college golf, told me that there's a kid named Bryson DeChambeau who's a world beater in the making, but fires at every pin and he can't get him to stop. Could I come teach it to him? So I taught it to him then in February 2015, right before he won the NCAAs and U.S. Amateurs. And apparently now I'm a strategy expert. So here I am.
Yeah, you've done quite well, Scott. It's great to see how the game has matured into more about the skill of playing the game, not just about how the golf swing looks and so forth. So I love what you're doing with that.
It's funny you say that because back whenever I was playing professionally in my 20s, I'm not kidding. I wanted to have a beautiful golf swing because I wanted Jack Nicklaus specifically to see me hit a ball one time and think, man, that guy's got a great swing. And I did. I striped the golf ball, but from a lack of experience, I just never learned to score. And by the time I was starting to figure it out, I think around 27 playing mini tours, I was finally just frustrated with it and gave up. And that's when I started playing a lot of poker. And honestly, Decade is just poker math and mindset. I was just a lunatic and really just understanding these little mistakes that we make that make you feel like you should have shot lower every time. It's not about being better. It really is strategy. I truly believe, looking back at it, that I felt like I needed to get physically and mechanically better to stop making that bogey from 120, as opposed to thinking, well, maybe if I just aimed a couple yards, not all the way to the middle of the green, but just gave it a little bit of room, maybe that shot would have been on the green and actually had to look at birdie instead of short-sighted and dead. So it really is a background of just struggling as a playing professional and then helping some of the best players in the world, but more importantly than anything, actually caddying for them when they were struggling, because removing the emotional attached to the outcome that you have to have as a player, that you not have to have, but you do have. Once you're caddying, that goes away, and you're just thinking so much clearer, so much less emotionally. And to be perfectly honest, if you'd asked me the first couple of years of Decade, I'd been like, it's all the math, I'm a genius. In hindsight, it's actually, I'm such an idiot that I couldn't think while playing golf, and removing the playing. It's like, oh, this is how it works. So carry on.
Yeah, Scott, I love it. I think I was saying to you earlier off the show we have a junior golf academy, and with our player development assessment and our index is what we work with our young players on, understanding kind of where their games are in the moment. And obviously it's about the player development pathway. And we use Decade because we believe that once a player understands kind of where their skills are and their, let's call it their game mindset, and knowing what they can do and can't do, using Decade and the strategies that you've created has been such a game changer for our kids to go out there and go, okay, I can't hit a high draw into a back left pin, but I can certainly hit it straight in the middle of the green. Right. I mean, and kind of understanding that where their skills are to what's needed to play good golf, right, are completely, opposites in some ways, right? It's like you don't have to have the perfect golf swing to hit the perfect shot every time. You just need to know what you can do so you can play the shot that gives you the highest percentage of making the best score you can. Would you say that's a big part of why you created this?
I mean, absolutely. I knew early on, especially after, again, caddying for Will, that the game was way more about bogey avoidance. So what I really did initially was just solve strategy, but I didn't really know why it was solved. I just knew it was solved. And then as I got access to ShotLink and more just raw data on scoring, And then obviously with starting the Decade app where I've got hundreds of thousands of round entered, it's so much of it is so obvious in hindsight. And that's when people give me a hard time on social media, like, this is common sense. I'm like, well, it is once I told it to you. But the idea that your score is going to improve more by not making bogey than it is by making birdie. And again, a lot of the stuff I know is cliche that a lot of great instructors have been saying for a long time. But now being able to use the data, and again, I even hate the word data because it sounds intimidating, but being able to use information to just say, no, really, as your scoring average improves from 79 to 76, 82% of your improvement typically is from avoiding bogeys, not more birdies. And then as you go every 3 shots, 76 to 73 and 73 to 70, 70% of those 3 shots is from avoiding bogeys. And this is really the key is, if I told you to just go out and not make bogeys, I don't want you feeling timid or I'm not being aggressive or I'm being, conservative or whatever. I want you to feel like you're playing aggressively, but aggressive means not making bogeys. And so the real kind of like the punchline of that is, I from skill can avoid bogey from 130 yards. Even with incredible skill, making birdie from 130 still requires luck. I have to get the directional and distance component to go the same way to hit the ball inside of 8 feet, which once we're playing a game where there's outside influences with wind, on tour, you've got a distance to the front edge of the green and then a pin sheet. Like anytime you see someone hole a golf shot on tour and they're like, that was an amazing shot, it's extraordinarily unlikely that they were 124 when they thought they were 124. I mean, it's not only extraordinarily unlikely, it's basically not the case. So even shots you hole were essentially, I mean, again, kind of like by definition, luck. And so once you start realizing I can intentionally not make bogeys and I can just wait out the same variance in luck to get those birdies, it's just that's why I typically play pretty darn good golf. I haven't had much iron. I had knee surgery back in January, so my iron play has been bad because I can't get on my left side for a couple of years. But I drive it well because you can hang on the right. And so my score is like, I just shoot 72 every time I play. Every once in a while, I'll get hot and have a 65 like I had with Garrett from Good when I had him out for my one-day member guest.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, like Q School, Championship Q School, I literally shot like 71, 71, 73, 71, final stage 75, 72, 66, 70. Like I've just got this tight window because I'm not making bogeys, but also I don't quite have the skills to make birdies. So just shoot the same score every day.
So let's try to break this down for our audience, if you don't mind, Scott. A lot of information there for sure. I'll actually go a step further and say, whatever it is you're doing for the great players, I would actually say that it's 5, 6, 7 shots a round that are lost by junior golfers, and the younger you are, the more losses. So this is to the parents out there, and I'll give you a couple examples, Roger, and then I'll throw it to you. I would put the percentage, and let's just say that we're talking about 100,000 junior golfers. I would say the percentage of junior golfers that shoot the pin, and whatever that number reads, they have an automatic club that they go to because that's how far they hit that club. And I would say I'm in the high 90%. I'm talking about great AJGA players that are going to play college golf. I'm talking about notable players that are making it to Kashada. I'm talking about definitely throughout US kids and all the way down. You shoot the pin, that number matches a club that you and practice on the range, and I hit my 8-iron 145. Oh, the pin's 145. Perfect. Give me my 8-iron. I would say we're in the 90% of every single hole in junior golf. That is the math equation that is used to determine the club. If it's really blowing, maybe we're gonna throw some grass in the air, and maybe we might use wind to try to help us make our decision. But for the most part, it's whatever club we use at the range. That's how far we hit it. And I'll go one step further, Roger. I did this with my son, Caden, where probably 12, 13, we would get in the car and we would I know this is a big mistake, but we would talk about the bogeys. And I would say,
I don't think
and
that's a
that's the
mistake at
best
all.
shot you hit all day. You made double. And what we did in a really, because I'm not that smart at all, what we kind of formed was your best shots can't be bogeys or doubles. And the only reason your best shot was double was because it was a back pin. It was blowing 5 miles an hour, barely even blowing, but it was a back pin. You shot the pin. It was 145. It was an 8-iron. That 8-iron just went 151. You're now under a tree over the green or in the hazard over the green. You couldn't have hit it any better. But you didn't take the other things into the equation, like, wow, that pin's one pace off the back. Maybe I should shoot the front of the green and see, wow, the front's 131, the pin's 148. Maybe I need to not go with that 148 club. But I'm telling you, for our audience, we're talking in the high 90% radar, number, club, hit. And that's about as much math as we're using in the junior game.
I would agree with that. The only thing I would add is the bigger problem is front hole locations. Very rarely, so if you've got a 145 club, very rarely do you hit that club 155. But you definitely hit it 135 a ton. And that's why even with the PGA Tour players that I work with, I literally just say, y'all suck to front hole locations, because they'll laser that 145, not laser, but hey, I'm 145 to the front, 151 to the pin. I'm going to land this 9-iron 147 and hit it tight, barely miss it, come up in the front bunker and make a bogey, when it's like, you could have just hit that 4 yards. The problem is we've got a shot pattern, and it resembles a shotgun blast. So I know where you want to hit it, but you're going to hit it in the general vicinity of that. And that's really what we're managing around golf. And a couple of notes that I made while you were talking there, the real problem, and I'm speaking now to the junior golf parents, but I'm also speaking to the junior golfers. I think this is something that's okay to acknowledge. You don't have a functioning brain yet, man. Like, you do not have a prefrontal cortex. You can be the smartest person on the planet, but without the prefrontal cortex fully formed, which for guys is around 25, girls is a little bit earlier than that. But without that part that brings all your brain together to make a reasonable decision, it doesn't matter how much I teach you, you're going to keep doing stupid stuff. Now, as a guy who's got a 15-year-old daughter, I'm like, oh, I've been traveling the world for the last 10 years telling people how bad at decision-making kids are. And I'm like, oh, shoot, it's worse than I thought. And so that's really the problem. And that's where I would say the structure of the decade decision-making process, like, even if you don't have a functioning brain yet, if you can run this simple script, you're going to pick at least a decent target. And the reason that's necessary is golf is the only sport in the world that's not played on a uniform field of competition. And not to mention, even if you go out for a playing lesson with your swing instructor, the odds that they know what they're talking about is pretty slim. I mean, unless they were Tiger Woods, because even guys on tour don't have very good strategy for the most part until, hopefully theoretically learning decade. Once you realize that, okay, you're 141. Should I aim at the flag or not? Well, is the green 50 yards wide? Because middle of the green's probably too conservative there. Number 18 at St. Andrews is 52 yards wide. Number 10 at Pebble Beach is 17 yards wide. So it's this non-uniformity of golf courses that basically makes you have to learn a system. And the last thing I'll say to that is, it's easy to look at Zalatoris, and he won the U.S. Junior. So it's easy to sit here and think, well, this kid had an outstanding junior golf career. He did not. He was ranked 3,300 in the world when he graduated from high school. And we won the Texas Amateur 2 weeks later and the U.S. Junior the following month. It was purely bad decision-making. And with Will specifically, he obviously is a great ball striker, struggles with his putting. So he's out there thinking, I need to be making birdies, but I'm going to need to make them with my iron play. I'm going to need to stuff these. And it's actually kind of a paradox with Will. He was such a bad putter. He's better now, but he was such a bad putter in high school. I actually want him putting sooner because he's going to be able to lag it to 3 or 4 feet a heck of a lot easier than he's going to be able to chip it to 3 or 4 feet. And if he's missing an extra 3 or 4 greens around, which he was because of playing too aggressively, that means 3 or 4 more 8 to 10 foot par putts on average. It's just, I mean, the math is so straightforward on it. That's just 2 shots. And that is exactly what his scoring average improved year over year from high school to college golf. It was not about getting better whatsoever. It was purely about making better decisions. And again, the difference in like your traditional playing lesson is if I tell you the correct stuff, even out there on number 6 at your home course, well, now you in real time, junior golfer out there with all the emotions of playing, you've got to recognize in real time, this situation matches what my teaching pro told me on number 6 at my home course and make a good decision. Like it's not going to happen. And so learning a system, again, I hate feeling salesy, but without learning a system, you're still just out there flying by the seat of your pants, winging it.
Yeah, no, Scott, I think that's spot on. And as you were saying, the prefrontal cortex is not developed. These kids don't know how to make decisions, and it's not their fault. It's just human nature, right? It's just
what age do I get that, Roger?
Ryan, I think we're still working on it, right?
I'm 15. I feel like I'm just checking it off.
Yeah, exactly.
I think mine's coming in any day with Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I ordered that. Yeah. No, but I think that is a big problem today. You know, that even parents don't understand that kids, no matter how many times they take a playing lesson, how many times they play, they still haven't developed those functioning skills yet, right? And the mental skills of, you know, what to make better decisions. And I think to your point of creating a system, very much like what we were trying to do with PDI and creating a system, understanding, you know, mental skills, golf skills, physicals. Can I do what I'm asking myself to do? And do I have the tools to do it? Right. So kind of we look at it from a lead factor standpoint, which is why, you know, we believe Decade is such a great fit for our system and what we're doing with it, and why we advocate, you know, your system to all of our players and parents is because know where you are in your developmental pathway, and having a system that allows you to help make better decisions because you're not capable of making those decisions as you're growing, you can't help but, you know, be a better golfer, right? And that's the game. That's the name of the game. To your point, like, you know, looking at Zalatoris, you know, coming out of high school at 30, you know, 3,000 plus ranking, and playing at Wake Forest, he didn't change his golf skills that much, right? I mean, he changed how he thought about it, right? He changed how he thought about those and made decisions based on based on you being with him, helping him make those decisions, right? And then he learned your system.
Well, and just to put a bow on that, because I know parents, like, trust me, if I had a junior golfer, it would be eternally frustrating. The amount of parents are like, my kid's still doing, you know, we've just talked, my kid's doing all kinds of dumb stuff. I talk to him all the time. He's still doing dumb stuff. Zalatoris' agent asked me 2 weeks ago if I would take his son out to play golf, and it was the first time I'd ever gone out with him. And honestly, like, kid's really good. Like, I was not expecting to be as good as he is. And here's a kid that Will Zalatoris, PGA Tour Masters runner-up, has told him, you need to get fully invested in Decade. Mm-hmm. His dad, who played golf at Texas, has been like, this is how it works. And the kid still just hasn't bought in. Yeah. And I do believe I'm good at presenting these ideas differently. But my point is, I just took that kid out and basically said, let's just try to not make a bogey today. We're going to charge $10 for every bogey and higher. We don't get anything for birdies. And he went out and he played solid. Now I will say that I was talking his ear off because that's just what I do in 9 holes. So it's a little overwhelming. But that kid went out the next day and shot a bogey-free 68 in a high school golf tournament. Wow. And it's just, again, I hate saying it can be that easy. But the real issue is if you feel like you should have shot lower every time you play, you're either not as good as you think you are, or you made mental and strategic mistakes. It can literally be nothing else, and it's probably a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. What I always say is, if it is mental and strategic mistakes, what's your plan for stopping that? Again, back when I was playing professionally in my 20s, me and my buddies would talk about all the dumb stuff we did that day, and I'd go out and do it again the next day. And I legitimately thought, I just need to get better at golf to stop that. And it's like, no, it's not the way it works. And like I say, so here's a kid that Zalatoris himself had said, you need to do this. And it's just a difficult thing to get through, which is why with the Decade app, you get this content over and over and over again, because you're just going to need reinforcement. But at the end of the day, rather than being oblivious to the mistakes you're making, now you're at least aware of them. You're going to go make them again. And then hopefully in journaling after the fact, you'll reinforce that idea, and then you're going to make the mistake again. But the point of Decade is we're going to take a decade off your learning curve, because you're going to at least be aware of the mistake, and then you keep making it. Eventually, hopefully quicker, you're going to stop than you would on your own. I mean, it's just the way humans work, unfortunately, especially kids.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, I think I just heard a clue there. He said a decade off of the learning curve. So is that where the name came from, Scott?
Yeah. So Zalatoris, after the Texas AM in 2014, he sent me a text that just said, I'll never be able to thank you. You've given me 25 years of experience in 5 days. And it was interesting because I wasn't doing this to build a product.
Right.
It was only after the U.S. Junior I saw the SMU coach at the USAM that summer in Atlanta, and he was like, "You've got something that you could sell here." And I was like, I've actually been thinking about what I could do. I mean, I had a full-time job as an electricity consultant at the time, but I was like, it's definitely crossed my mind. And then that was a couple months went by, and Bryson kept doing stupid stuff the whole fall. And he called me. He's like, "You got to put this into a seminar so you can teach it indoors." Because a college coach, I would be considered a third-page coach. Mm-hmm. So we had to do it indoors. So I'm like a psychologist. I'm for sure the first guy that went out and bought a drone and flew it around golf course, because I'm like, well, if we're going to do it indoors, I'm going to need video. And between Google satellites and drones, and it was potluck that he said you should do this indoors. I never would have thought to create an app. But at the end of the day, teaching course management, as weird as it sounds, indoors is the way to do it. Is it optimal? It's definitely not optimal, but it's better than doing it outdoors, because it's impossible to not have an emotional tie to your scores, to not be embarrassed. Like, God dang, that's Will Zalatoris and DeChambeau's coach. I hope he likes my swing just like I hope Jack Nicklaus likes my swing. Like, that's not what we're here for. I've a couple of years later, a future U.S. Juniors dad asked me, like, will you come out and play with my son? I'm like, yeah, but we're not going to play. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we're just going to walk. We'll get a tee time, and we're going to walk in situations, because the worst thing that can happen, again, I'm still wet behind the ears at this point, is a pin is 5 yards from the left edge. I tell him to aim, let's call it 6 yards right of that, and he pushes his shot 6 yards. So he's missed his target by 6 yards, which if he had happened to pull it 6 yards, he would have been right by the hole. But he happens to push it. Now he's almost 40 feet from the hole, whatever it is, and he 3-putts it. He's going to blame strategy, not just variance. And that's the worst outcome I can have, because he's going to look at me. The flip side of that is 100% of the time that I take players out, it actually just happened with Zalatoris' agent's son. I gave him a target with a sand wedge, literally just a sand wedge, 4 yards left of this pin because there was water, right? And he hit a laser beam right at my target. And I said, that's the shot you wish you had aimed at the flag, isn't it? He goes, yep. And I said, how far were you trying to hit that exactly? He says 104, which was pin high. Pin was in the middle of the green. We get up there, and I knew it because I could tell, and I knew where this story was going. He was 25 feet long. So it's like, even if you were aiming at that flag, you still would have a 25-footer, but the trigonometry, the math, instead of having a 25-footer, he had like a 32-footer. Like, it's not that big of a difference unless you get both the distance and direction the same. Or correct, I should say, not the same, but both coordinates have to be right, and that's just luck. Right. I mean, it really is at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, we've captured shots, Scott, at our facility here with every junior every day for a long time, and just tracking the dispersions, right? So we can give them that feedback, and they start to realize that their 8-irons, they think once they hit it 170, that it goes 170, and the reality is that it's really their stock shot with that club at 170 is really like 158. I mean, that's when they're their best, at 158, and they don't realize that. And I think that value there is so huge, to your point, because it's a small variance between a miss and a really great shot. And so much of it can be luck, just based on, I got the right breeze, I got the right lie, or whatever it may be, right?
Well, and I'm using the words luck and variance just interchangeably here.
Yeah.
But that's every time I go walk, 9 holes with a tour player, I always kind of start off with, and my joke's out of the bag now, so it doesn't work on them anymore. But I'm always like, man, those amateurs on Wednesday, they have no clue how far they hit the ball, do they? They're just total idiots. You're like, oh my God, it's brutal. I'm like, you don't either. Because even they're playing for this perfect shot typically. I mean, and that's why very few players get enough shots past the hole. The best players, the best iron players, Tiger, DJ, these guys, they actually get the most shots past pin high of anyone. The guys that are losing their cards rather, they get about 32, 35% of their second shots I mean, and I'm talking like from 100 to 200 in the fairway, like shots that are not like from the rough from 240, like a very reasonable window. They're getting like 32 or 35% of their shots past the hole, and Tiger and DJ are up in the mid 40s. And so if you think about taking a shot pattern, if my microphone is the pin, if I don't the exact same shot pattern, if I just do a better job of, instead of coming up short all the time, center it better, that's going to lower my proximity just by choosing the right club. So what we want to do for that is hit 50 balls, whatever it is. We've got to use the same ball we use. We've got to do it off grass, because when you're doing it off of mats, you're catching it a few grooves up, spin rates change, the ball goes further with those mid irons. Short irons and long irons, not so much, but your 5, 6, 7, 8 iron, that can be a problem in there. And you hit 50 shots, throw out the shortest 15%, because we can't let miss hits destroy the average. Take the average of the rest, and that's how far you hit that club. What's hard is, for me, my perfect 8 iron, if I hit it perfect, it's going to go about 160. But my actual average of those numbers is like 156. What's hard is when I'm 156, I need to step up there and hit it full. And if I actually hit it on the button, it's going to be 12 or 15 feet by. And it sucks, but it's like, well, also I was just 160, which the scoring average is over par from there for me, for sure. And I just hit it to 15 feet and I get to 2-putt it for par. Like, that was a good outcome. And I've got to look at birdie. Again, this is just where, like I say, it's way easier to intentionally not make bogey than it is to intentionally make birdie. If there's any one soundbite that I would like on my tombstone, that's probably it. And the key is just thinking of fractions of shots gained and lost. You can only lose shots fractionally, and you can only gain them back fractionally. We all think of birdie as being -1 and bogey as being +1, but that's really not how it works. If the scoring average on the hole is 4.3 and you make a 4, you actually just gained 0.3 shots. A birdie is 1.3, and a bogey is only -0.7. And that's really the way it is, because if you think about it, at the end of the day, par is an irrelevant arbitrary number in the old Scottish sense. Like, they're actually correct. Par is irrelevant. And so once you start realizing I'm trying to beat the score of the field, which is almost by definition the scoring average, on each hole that I beat the scoring average, I'm gaining towards that. So even if the winning score is 20 under and I've gained 0.3 shots on a hole with a par, that par got me closer to my winning score. Like, well, no, it didn't get you under par. Like, that's an irrelevant number. And that's the shift in mindset that I think would have saved my professional career. I mean, I traveled with Chad Campbell and Chris Riley, 2 future Ryder Cuppers. I remember playing fractional. I'm like, I feel like I'm as good as these guys. And I did one twice on the Hooters Tour and whatever, but they just wore it out. They just understood how to play the game. And that's what we're trying to teach people.
Well, Scott, we appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Decade.golf is, I think, a great starting point for our audience and junior golfers, because, as I said, it's a bit of an epidemic in the junior game to not understanding, how to actually plan and to prepare for each hole and each shot. So thanks for coming on the podcast today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Great job.
Awesome stuff. Thanks, Scott.
Real interesting for sure, Roger. And, we know it's a gigantic a problem in the junior game, and certainly Decade is a great approach to try to have a game plan.
Yeah, well, think about how many parents at the end of a round or golf or a tournament that we've seen that, the player ends up not winning the tournament, right? Loses by a stroke or loses by, making a double bogey on the last hole, and the parent, walking off. How could you choke? How could you? And then, quite frankly, it's just not knowing how to make the better decision, right? And that's a skill, and I think that's what they don't realize is these are all skill sets to be learned. And I think in Scott's presentation, if you will, is saying, but if you have a system, you can actually rely on the system to actually help you make decisions. Very much so, like we talk about PDI, the system of player development assessments. It helps you understand exactly what Scott really is measuring, which is the lag result or the results of to an outcome. And we're saying, wow, if you actually know your skill sets and you know that data that we were just talking about, that your average shot dispersion is not 160, that's your best, but it's actually 158, 154. Well, you actually have a better chance already. So, and can I do that? And am I mentally, prepared to kind of buy into the system. So what a match made in heaven there.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much any decision I could have made as a junior golf parent was the wrong, but listening to this, I actually pretty much came up with the same philosophy just from watching great shots lead to bad results, only because there weren't all the variables weren't taken in. It was strictly shoot the pin, grab the club, hit it. You can't hit a perfect shot that goes 3 yards long and have lose 2 shots. I mean, there has to be to that point. So yeah, I'm giving myself a pat on the back for that.
As you should.
Yeah, as I should.
Yeah.
Massive press release went out yesterday. I know over 80,000 people in the NB3 database have received it. I already know it is circulating word of mouth. Everyone's talking about it. So let's talk about it, because it's really out there in the junior game. The press release yesterday, for the first time ever, there will be 8 exemptions to the NB3 Junior Golf World Championship in November. 8 exemptions based on a PDI score. What does that mean? So let's help explain it. One, if you finish 5th at your regional golf event for NB3 and only 2 players go to Kashada, that 5th place finish actually doesn't figure into how this works. You could finish dead last. I doubt that will happen, but theoretically, you could finish last in the golf tournament and still receive the exemption to the World Championship on Golf Channel, 4-hour Golf Channel broadcast, based on your PDI score. Everything comes out, the full explanation, all the videos. We've heard from Stanford's head coach. We've heard from Texas. We've heard from Oregon. I'm talking about John Fields at Texas saying when he recruits Roger, he wishes every single junior golfer had a PDI score, because it would make his job 1,000,000 times easier to start the recruiting process. There is so much to unpack, and obviously Scott went a little long there. But I mean, what is going to come out on Monday? So just chill out. You'll get your invitation on Monday if you are part of the NB3 family. If you're not, no problem. Just head to either the Junior Golf Hub, PDI, go to jgnc.org. You don't even have to play in an NB3 event. You don't even have to be registered to take part in this 8 exemption PDI play. This is wild, Roger. I know yours. I hope you're half as excited as me, because that would mean you're really excited.
Can't you tell I'm excited, Ryan? I'm super excited. I mean, listen, this is a long time coming. Obviously, partners like yourself and NOTA and NB3 Championship is we couldn't ask for a better partnership to do this with, because we believe the amicroteracy, right? Is that how you say that? Of playing to get into an event is so important, right, for junior golfers to learn, because it is a process in which they're going to have to learn when they go to college to qualify to play every week. So it's so important to kind of get them introduced to this early, but also to understand that your development matters to it matters to NOTA, it matters to you, it matters to us, it matters in your own playing, that we want to see you develop, and we're now going to start looking at this as, hey, you can develop as a player and not have a great golf tournament score, right? So let's take that out of the equation. I think as Scott was saying, some of the best learning is done without being on the golf course. It's being in a classroom, and this is, in a sense, it's on the golf course, but it's a classroom environment that says, let's just see if you have the skills. And boy, we're going to reward you for having the mental, physical, and golf skills that will show up eventually if you are continuing to work on your development. So really super exciting stuff here. Can't wait to see the first one take off.
So the way this will work is next week, they'll kind of come out in phases, Roger. About 5,000 players a day will receive, and we'll get to everybody very quickly, but about 5,000 players a day will get the exemption PDI email that will also come with the PDI self-assessment free app. Then it's 45 minutes of your time. I suggest you take a parent with you, but we actually all did it without a parent. I didn't even take my mom or dad with me, Roger.
Good for you,
I was
Ryan.
able to do it. So
Yeah.
listen, if
Every
you can do
it,
can do it if I could do it. So that's the good news.
Yeah.
Takes about 45 minutes of your time, and then it will download onto the worldwide leaderboard. You can take the self-assessment as many times as you want to continue to see your growth. And ultimately, we're going to be able to compare, the beauty of this, and man, I'm going so long here, but I'm just so jacked up about this. To hear Conrad Ray, the head coach at Stanford, talk about how his players, Carl Phillips, Michael Thornbjornsen, two guys that are on the PGA Tour right now.
Just won. Carl just won. Yeah.
Last week, right. Playing the players this week.
Yeah.
They have a PDI score. That score can be apples to apples. It's not about I was playing in altitude, I was playing on a windy day. It's not fair. They played on a beautiful day. It's apples to apples. Your PDI score under any element is going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And those PDI scores, you'll be able to judge yourself against these college players. And I promise you this will happen as well. There's going to be many, many boys and girls in the country that their self-assessment score is going to be better than players on these college teams. And that is going to absolutely light a light bulb. And you're going to see, as these PDI scores become published, you're going to see instant recruitment from college coaches because they're going to understand what that PDI score means. And the fact that it's better than college players, even if your golf score isn't, it predicts potential. This thing is going to take off like nothing we've really seen in junior golf in a long time. And so again, starting next week, you'll get the invitation, comes with the free app, 45 minutes. You go onto the worldwide leaderboard, see how you'd fare. 8 exemptions, Roger. That is a ridiculous total. When
Crazy.
You think that most regionals get 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And this is 8. You're going to have a good opportunity to get in that way.
Not a good opportunity. This is a great opportunity, Ryan.
Yeah.
This is phenomenal.
So I look forward to next week. In fact, next week, I actually want to do the podcast, and we will around what is transpiring across the nation. So for more on this, and if you haven't received your invitation when you listen to this, tune in next week and we will explain, if you still haven't gotten your invitation, how to go about it. So a lot of information coming, 8 exemptions to go play on Golf Channel for your junior golfer. This is going to be going to change the game. I really believe that you're going to have players being recruited by colleges because they have this score next to their name and next to their ranking and next to their scoring average. So a lot coming down the pike, Roger.
Yes, it is, Ryan. I mean, this is unprecedented, right? So golfers now are going to be compared to other athletes, or like other athletes. If you look at the rating now for football players in college, the 5-star basketball recruit, the 5-tool baseball recruit, you now have this rating that's going to be beside your name that's going to allow coaches to go, hey, I need to pursue this player. I didn't see this at first. Just like in other sports, there's so many of these athletes that are on great teams that go unrecognized, but yet when they actually go to a combine or go to some type of baseball, round robin tournament or something to show their skills, right? Right. I mean, these guys are doing these things now, and they are getting recognized. So now, for the first time ever, golfers are going to be, like many other athletes, going, hey, I might not have a great day or a great tournament this week, or maybe I'm just getting into tournaments, but I have the skills and I want to play at that next level. Coaches are recognizing it matters, right?
And this is also the biggest mover in this whole announcement is for the boy and girl that for whatever reason is not on the quote unquote national circuit,
That's
which
right.
we all know it tends to be a little bit of a good old boys network where you get on the circuit and it's the same kids every week. This is immune to that. Your score is your score. It doesn't matter where you live, how much money you make, how much money your parents, what clubs you hit.
Come
Your
on.
score is your score, and this bypasses all of that.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what events you play in. Your score, if your score checks out, you're going to be hearing from the big boys in college golf because they recognize what that score means. So tune in next week, Roger, and we will continue to next week. I really just want to focus on this because outreach is now so important. The questions are pouring in just from our press release yesterday. Our phone has not stopped ringing, asking questions. So we understand there are a lot of questions about the press release. Those answers will be coming, and we're going to use this podcast as an outlet to try to provide those answers. So certainly thanks to – go ahead, Raj.
I said that's awesome. So exciting.
Thanks to Scott Fawcett, certainly decade.golf. If you'd like more information on that, we encourage you to do so because, as I said, planning out your rounds is certainly a lacking detail of junior golf. For producer, director Michael Nick, for Roger Nick, I'm Ryan Burr saying we'll see you back here same time next week.